what I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have.
I've had rainbows in my clouds. And the thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so that you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud.
We all really, really love one another. Deep down, we all love one another, and we need to get back to that.
Hi, welcome to the Authentically You podcast. I'm Dr. Julie Ducharme, and I'm really excited to be back. We actually took a bit of a break during COVID, so I could spend some time with my kids and my family, and starting a new company, revamping. You'll hear lots more about that as I talk in my podcast. But I'm excited to start bringing in new guests and really talk about their authentic path. Something that I have learned when I wrote my book, Authentically You, was that everyone has a unique path and a unique story. And I really gain a lot of inspiration from hearing other people talk about their stories and their journeys because, I find so much motivation in that. And so I'm really excited today here to have Krystle on the show. Krystle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on here and to be part of this. So thank you for inviting me and allowing me to be part of this with you guys.
Yeah. And, Krystle and I actually met through social media. One of the best ways I find to network is in these different groups. And so I love this. I always do a pre-interview with everyone. And so I get a chance to get to know them a little bit before we actually hop on the air. And so Krystle and I got to talk a lot, and I love her journey, and I love the things she's going to share today with us. And so Krystle, I wanted you to first talk about your journey. You came from a very small, and I can relate to this. I grew up in a very small town I can't remember the number, but it was very, very small. And so you came from a very small place, Trinidad, and then transitioned to New York. And what a big jump that is. So I was wanting you to tell our listeners about your journey and how that started for you.
Okay, yeah, so I was born and brought up in Trinidad and Tobago. And not only, it's a small country, but I was actually brought up in a village. So I was from this very small village where everyone knew everyone. And, as an only child, I felt like my path was I never thought in my life that I would have left home to pursue, to move to a big city. So it was always like, okay, you go to school, you finish, you go to university there, you get married, get a job, have kids. That's what I expected. But when I was in high school in my senior year, this college came to recruit, and I was trying to get out of class, so I went to the lecture, went to the lecture, and the information, like they talk about, the programs, and they had these scholarships for West Indian students, and they were just saying, all these different things. So I mentioned it to my dad, and he was like, oh, let's go check it out, which was a huge surprise, to be honest. I had no idea they would be on board for that. We met the reps from the university, got all this information, and then next thing you know, I was applying and making a decision in 6 months to go to college in New York, of all places. Like I had family here. You hear all these things about New York City and New York and how rough it is, and I was just like, wow, this is definitely going to be different. But my parents, even though I'm an only child and I kind of grew up a little sheltered, they were very, very big on pushing me to be all that I can be, I guess. So they actually were like, once, with me, yes, let's do this. Let's see how it falls into place. And then, I got one of the West Indian scholarships, and I came up here, and that was 16 years ago in 2004.
Wow.
And and the plan was only to stay here for 2 years because it was an accelerated degree program, and then move back home. And then after my second semester, I was like, I don't think I'm ready to move back home. And it's been 16 years and I'm still here.
I can relate to that because I grew up in a small town, and not that I loved my small town, don't get me wrong, but I was really anxious to get out to the world, and then when I got out there, and of course, San Diego was where I went to go to college and play sports. I just loved it. I loved it. And, I continued on to do some traveling, but I understand that small town, feeling, and then going to somewhere new and realizing, I didn't want to go back home. I was really having a lot of fun. And so, I like what you're talking about because, I think many times people are afraid to make that journey, to step outside of that safe place. And especially you being raised in a village, I can imagine the culture shock had to have been pretty big. I mean, what was it like when you were doing your transition and going there? Do you have any memories of where you were like, wow, I had no idea that, was what happened here or this, that you can talk about?
Yeah, I remember it so vividly. One was the fact that, especially in in Trinidad and growing up in a community, you say you say good morning to everyone. You say, hi, how are you doing? And so I came to New York and I would walk on the streets and I would say good morning to everyone. Answer, they'll look at me like I'm a little bit nuts, and they wouldn't answer. And I was like, wow, people here are so rude. And honestly, like yeah. And in the first 3 months, I got really, really homesick, which I think is expected.
Yeah.
No matter if you're in a new environment and you're enjoying something new, if you're taken out of your comfort zone, especially your home that you knew for 2 decades, you're going to experience. So I was very homesick, and I think it was because it was just night and day. So I thought people were very rude. The weather was just like it, I came in the fall, so it was very rainy and gloomy. It started to get cold. And I remember one time I didn't understand the concept that the sun can be shining and it could be cold. So I don't need a coat today. I can just walk out, right? Because I open up the window and it's just like, because before it was all rainy and gloomy. And then one day the sun comes out and it's just so bright. It's like, it's a hot day today. And I decided to walk out in flip-flops and no coat. And I had to run right back into my dorm room and change because I was like, okay, so that was something that was a totally new concept to me, that especially coming from an island.
Yeah, for sure.
Sun doesn't necessarily have an impact on the temperature. And one of the big things that stood out to me, so, watching TV, I would see sometimes, especially something is based in New York, you would just see the sea of people dressed in black clothes and walking really quickly. And I used to always think it was like special effects. So the second week I was here, I went down to Grand Central, where in Midtown Manhattan, where that's where like a lot of it's a huge terminal. It's absolutely gorgeous. Still one of my favorite spots in the city. But all the different trains come in there, especially if they're coming from like the suburbs and different counties. So it was like 5 p.m. on a Friday, and I looked out and I just see a sea of people dressed in black walking so quickly. And I was like, this is brave. So those were things that were just like really eye-opening and shocking to me. Like, people were on their own beat. It was just, they were like focused on their own selves, and not that they were rude, but they, it's just like the personality. But in the beginning, that was just such a big culture shock to me.
I can imagine that. And I'm actually imagining you walking down the street smiling, saying hi to everyone, and people going like, who is this person? But I mean, I grew up in a small town where you just knew about everyone, as you walked by. If you didn't know them personally, you knew of them. And right. So, I was used to, you're in the store, hey, hi, how's it going? But I love that. I think if we all said hi or hello or good morning to each other, even if we didn't know each other, I think it would probably make for much nicer people. It makes people get out of themselves. So I love that. Well, we talked off mic about this, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about your mom and her influence. As I mentioned, my mom was a tremendous influence on me. She passed away 7 years ago, and you kind of don't realize the influence that your parents have on you until you don't have them. And, my mom actually, her influence after she passed led me to write, a couple more books and to really talk about her a lot in my talks and when I travel and what I do. And so, we talked about that. And I would love for you to talk about your mom and the influence she had on your life, because, I think moms are important. I think we got to talk about them more. And so I'd love for our listeners to hear about, that part of your journey.
Sure. So my mom, so just like you, I can relate to that. My mom passed away 7 years ago. This year, this actually next month will be 7 years. And it's true, like, not that you want to say that you take them for granted, but you always think that your parents are going to be around for forever.
Yeah.
Right. So growing up, like my mom, she was a tough woman. Like she was, and I guess she had to be now as an adult, I see it, because my dad, typical stereotypical daddy's girl, I had around my finger. So she had to be the disciplinarian, in that she had to sometimes take the tough road and be the one that's keeping me in line, which I am so grateful for today as an adult, that, they made sure that I didn't, because my dad is so soft, such a sweet man. God bless him. She had, she had this, my mom she's a strong woman, and she knew how to really set boundaries, which before I didn't understand. And now I realize, wow, I actually want to be more like her, like to set boundaries, because I loved how she did it,
Isn't that so crazy, right? When we're young, we're like, I'm never going to be like that. Gosh, I would never do that to my children, And then same thing, here I am, 43, and I'm like, you know what? That's the way my mom did it, and it worked really well. So I'm going to do it like that. But like you said, you don't get it until later. And I agree with you. I mean, I think all women, have to be so strong, and so, and not saying that, like you said, not saying that guys aren't strong, but women a lot of times are pushed into that role. And I agree with you. I love that, I'm doing stuff that my mom, did, that I said I would never do that to my kids.
Yeah, I was like, sometimes I say certain things, it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds just like my mother. But and then now I find myself as like, I loved that she really knew how to stand her boundaries, and people respected her and loved her about it. Like she knew how to be strong in her conviction, but she had one of the most giving hearts, and she really loved and cared for people, and she was very compassionate, but she also knew how to draw a very strong boundary so that people would not take advantage of her. And as I get older, I realize that is such an important trait to have in today's world, because we do have to take care of ourselves and our mental health and our well-being first, and that starts with really having proper boundaries, not because you're trying to be mean, but you're trying to make sure that you take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stands out about my mom was that, that I really am grateful to her about, is when I had just moved here. So as I mentioned, I was so homesick. I was like, I can't do this. It was like about 4 weeks into the semester, and I was like, yeah, I can't do this. I'm not cut out for this. And I called home crying. Now I'm an only child. I'm supposed to be the one thing that they live for and want more than in this world. Called home and I was crying to her, and I was like, please let me come back home. I can just go to the university there. I don't like it here. I was like, it's hard, it's lonely, and I was just crying. Like I was so sad, and I'm thinking that they're going to be like, okay, come back home. And my mom was like, no. She was like, no. She's like, we already paid for your semester, and you're going to see it through, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. I was like, geez, like I was a little hurt, right? Because I was like, they don't miss me. Like, I can't believe that they're leaving me. And it's one of the best things my mother ever did, because I I had to stay and go through that very, very uncomfortable transition, because if I had left to come back home, I would have never had these experiences. And it's only later on, after she passed away, my dad had said to me, um, he was like, after that phone call with your mom, and you guys hung up, she cried.
Aw.
She cried because she was like, she knew this is what that she had to do, that you had to do this, but it broke her heart to hear how sad you were, and how tough things were, but she knew that she had to do that because she couldn't just let you come back home.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, my dad said, my mom had a double whammy. My brother and I both went off to college at the same time. So they
Wow.
dropped my brother off in LA, and then they dropped me off in San Diego. They did, like, in one fell swoop. And my poor mom, my dad said she cried the whole 6 hours home as she dropped us off. And at the time, you're a kid, you're like, why are you crying, mom? It's not that big of a deal. But I definitely had phone calls like that to my parents as well, who had said the same thing. Nope, you're scholarshiped, you're gonna stick it out, and just gotta tough it out. And I think as parents, we want the best for our kids. We want the best, and at the same time, you have to help push them in those uncomfortable or really tough situations. And like you said, you look back at that, and I remember a teacher told me that I was not smart enough and I should drop out of school. So I called my mom crying, and she's like, he's an idiot. Speaking of moms, let's transition to talking about your mom and her situation.
My company had just decided that they were going to sponsor me a green card because I was working for them for a long time, and they wanted to keep me on board. So they said, hey, we're very interested in sponsoring you a green card so you can stay here, and transition into residency. So they had put it in for they had already put it in for me, and it was in the process of being processed. And as a result, if I were to leave the country for say an extended time, it would be that I was abandoning that, right?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and then it would just be null and void. So I remember I went home for work. So I used to travel home a lot for work as well, because one of our markets was based in Trinidad. And every time my mom and I would talk every day, and every day she would come on the phone, she just sounded so strong. She would just be this epitome of strength. And I'm like, Ma, how's everything going? She's like, it's good. She's like, I'm just going to the doctors. And so I didn't know what was happening really. And then one day I went home for work, and then so I worked in the northern part of Trinidad, and we lived in the south. So my dad picked me up, and we were going down, and then he was like, I just want to kind of give you the heads up. Your mom is not how you remember her from a few months ago. So I walk into the room, and my mom is all skin and bones lying on the bed. And it was the most heartbreaking thing that I ever saw, because it was just definitely different from the strong, vibrant woman that I knew. And then when she saw me, she just like tried to get up, and with all the strength, and that it just resonated, just the strength of this woman. So eventually during that time I was there, she had to go into the hospital, and that's when her doctor came, and he said, and I'm not sure if, I'm sure other listeners who have been in this position, the doctors asked to see me and my dad privately, and he said, he pulled us into a room, and then he said, I don't think that the cancer has really progressed, and I don't think that she's going to make it till Christmas. So this was in October, and Christmas was just 2 months away. And I what? I was like, wait. I watch a lot of Grey's Anatomy, and I see this all the time. I never expected this before, because I was 29 at the time, that this would happen to me. So, I was like, listen, I am going to give up everything and move back home, and I'm going to nurse my mom back to health, right? I'm going to do everything and be there and take care of her. And because at the end of the day, that's your parents, right? You're not ready to lose them. And I was like, who cares about everything? Like, I don't care. Like, all that matters is just that I'm there. And because I'm not ready for this. And I said to, so I was in the hospital fluffing her pillows and stuff like that. And she's like, what are you doing? I was like, no, I'm just going to send in my resignation. I'm moving back home. I'm here. I'm going to be here with you. And she looked at me in this very, very stern, her name was Radha, in this stern Radha way. And anyone who knows her knows that look. And she was like, let me ask you 3 things. I was like, what? She's like, do you have a man here? I was like, no. She was, do you have a job here? I was like, no. And then she was like, so what are you moving back for? And I was like, for you, Ma. And she was like, no. I did not work. Me and your dad did not work and sacrifice so much for you to come back here and give up those things. The stuff that's happening in your life, you need to be up there. She's like, I will be fine. And and then I had this whole conversation with my dad and everything, and it was like a battle, right? And they were both adamant. They're like, and they've never said to me, don't do this or don't do that. They've always said, we will support you in whatever you do. But that was the one decision I wanted to make that they were both adamant on. And and so she was like, she pulled it, this is my wish. This is my wish.
Oh gosh, she pulled the mom wish.
She pulled the mom wish. And, but it was hard. It was so hard because, and I'm not sure if anyone has been caught up with that choice, right? Where it's between you and these 2 people that mean the world to you, but then there are outside people who don't know the full story that tried to weigh in on what you should do.
Yeah. I definitely understand that. Yeah.
So, I dealt with a lot of guilt. I was like, this is my mom's wish. And I was going back and forth a lot. Thankfully, my job was very understanding. So I was able to come back and forth a lot. And she passed away like maybe a month later. And, but during that time, everyone was like, oh, you should, like, what are you doing? Kind of implying that I'm selfish. And so dealing with all the guilt was very, very hard, but also dealing with, this is something that my parents also, this path that I didn't understand as well. And so when my mom passed away, her birthday is December 19th. And I always think this is just so very interesting that my application for my residency should have taken 3 additional years. It came through in half the time, and the date that the USCIS received the documents to process was on her actual birthday.
Wow.
Right, the month that she died, the year that she died, that's when I saw the notification. They received it and stamped it on that day.
Wow.
And and now I just filed for my citizenship, and and I think of all the things that I've done here that I achieve, and I was like, it's all due to her and her sacrifice and her pushing me even in times that I didn't want to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned people saying things to you, and something I've learned is that no one ever knows the situation at hand, and those people who judge, when I was younger, it was like, God, I just want everyone to like me. You're like, I don't understand why everyone doesn't like me. But as I got older, I realized you can't please everyone. And it's definitely not anyone's opinion to get in the middle of a crisis like that. And I think that you did the right thing. You followed the wishes of your parents. And, I think in the long run, that's what your mom would want, right? And so I think it's amazing that you did that. I think it shows tremendous strength on your side, that you did that. And we all deal with, loss different ways, depression, guilt, the list goes on and on. But I think you sharing that story of how that went through on her birthday is so cool and such a great memory, such a neat thing to have. So I really love that. And this continued to push you really in this authentic path. I mean, this story and really what happened with your mom. And so I'd love to transition and talk about after that all happened, which I know when that happened with my mom, I was like, okay, what next? Right. And so, I'm obviously going to share my stuff because this is about you, but what from that kind of pushed you to what you are doing today? And tell us a little bit about what you're doing today.
So, so one of the things that on the like the day of the funeral, just before we had closed the coffin for that final moment, I did say, and I said this to her in those last moments as well, while she was transitioning. I said to her, I was like, listen, I promise you that I am going to create a legacy and that your name will always be remembered. And that renewed a sense of purpose. And I was like, there has to be more in life that I have to do. So I worked in higher education, and one of my passions was I always believed that education is the way out of poverty. And one of the things that I always wanted to do was, you know, build my own business in a way that I can also give back, specifically to people from impoverished situations, money towards their education. I always said that I never wanted someone who has a big dream to be held back because of finances. So it's like, if it is to create something that I can bridge that gap, that is what I want to do. So I decided to, so I was looking at, so what I do now, I still work in higher education because I love helping students. I do love the industry and helping students connect to their career path. And I also have a social media business where I work with entrepreneurs to help them grow their social media presence. To me, it's about helping someone reach their goal and reach their audience and help them get their message out there. So I work with entrepreneurs that need help in finding ways to get their message to a very big audience. And that's why I love working with like coaches and motivational speakers, because I tend to I love what their message stands for. And I really feel like, hey, I want to help you get this out there. So we're going to work together to do that. Right. And one of the big reasons for setting that up was that I believe that I wanted to create something that would create wealth, that I can help this dream that I have. So in 2016, my dad and I set up a foundation in my mom's name, which is called the Sylvan R. Dookoo Memorial Foundation. And what we do, we would, come across like kids that actually need assistance. And, whether it's books, whether it's sometimes a scholarship, anything that we can do to help them, kind of take that financial pressure off. And one of the things too, as I started to search from what I wanted to do, I got involved with my church, and we do this twice. I've been out to this school in South Africa called Hope Schools, which is based in East London, South Africa. And so the kids out there are all either orphaned, affected, or infected by the AIDS virus, right? HIV AIDS. So we would go out and spend a week there. And then from there, I was able to, through my mom's foundation, sponsor 3 kids for their education so that they can get an English education, they can get their medication, they can get their meals, and it puts them in a path so that they can get great jobs when they come out. Because if they sometimes stay in the townships, it's hard for them to kind of get into the workforce afterwards.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love that. It's funny. I feel like you and I are so similar. I started a scholarship under my mom's name as well, and she would do things like she would buy prom dresses for kids who didn't have money to go to prom, or she would help pay for their SATs, anything to just help them what they're doing. And so we started that as well. My dad helped me with that. And so we regularly scholarship men or women, young men or women who are in need of, whether it's, a prom dress or some money for school or whatever. And so I love that because, I think the most important thing as you talk about your mom and my mom just as well sounds very similar to your mom, is that, they would want us to give it, to pay it forward. I mean, I think that's one of the best ways to get past grief is to pay it forward in someone's memory. And I love that you said that you wanted to create a legacy, because it's such a cool thing. We can either get, we can either get caught in our grief, or we can turn it around and say, I could sit in the corner and cry all day, or I could go give. Because the best way to get over grief is to give to someone, because it just changes your perspective. You can't feel bad for yourself when you're making someone else happy. At least I can't, and so, that was definitely one of the ways that I definitely helped navigate through that. Was I started giving back. I started coaching at a school. Someone asked me to do that right after that, and I thought, oh, I can't do this. And my husband was like, you should do it. And it was a great thing, because just giving to those kids and then starting scholarships. So I love all you're doing, and I think it's so great, because it's such a great perspective on, you didn't use any excuses. You didn't say, oh, I can't do this anymore because my mom's gone, or I need to do that. You're really fulfilling what you told your mom you would do. And I think that's fantastic. So, and I'd love for our listeners to know, how would they, if they want to give to your, scholarship that you give, how do they do that? Where do they go? How do they connect with you if we've got budding entrepreneurs who need some help with social media? What are all those links or websites we need to know?
So if they want to connect with me, I can be reached at LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn at Krystle Dookoo. So it's Krystle Dookoo, or Instagram at imagery, IMAJERIE _J, or on Facebook at Krystle Dookoo. And my website is www.imagery. So just like the word imagery, except with the Y, it's IE, imagerymentors.com.
Awesome. And we will put that in the link below, guys. So if you're listening to this while you're driving, we will have all the information there. Just go back to the link and you can catch that later. I love this. And, Krystle, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us, because I know that there's someone out there that is going to appreciate all of this, your journey, what you're doing, and giving back. And of course, obviously, if someone has a child who needs to give back, or that needs some help as well, they can reach out to you as well for that.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, reach out to me, and I'd love to, talk about that. Or even if you said someone thinks, wow, I'm going through something and I don't know how to navigate it, reach out to me. I feel like that's how we grow. If we really just be there as a support to other people that may be going through similar situations,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast. This has been such a pleasure speaking with you. And I want to encourage each one of you guys to go check out all of Krystle's stuff on social media, give her a follow, see how you can support. I as well support many nonprofits. And so we want to keep doing that, because I really feel that's how our world keeps turning, is by giving back. So thank you so much for being on the show. And as I always say, guys, live, love, laugh, and always be your authentic self.